2025 has come and gone. I still have no idea how that happened. I feel like I blinked and it just went. But in the space of that blink, I'd somehow watched around 150 movies released this year, which is a personal record for me. Some were incredible, movies that have permanently etched themselves into the corners of my brain. Others that stayed in my brain for maybe the wrong reasons. And a whole bunch that were kind of forgettable. Yeah, I think we have this conversation every year. Was it a good year for cinema? We constantly compare to previous years and decide whether or not it was good. And the reality is, every year is a good year for cinema. I think especially this year, given I watched so many films, it did make me realize that sometimes the best films of the year do require a little work to find. And sometimes they don't. So anyway, as is my yearly tradition, here are my top 25 films of the year. And as always, they're based on UK release dates or if I was able to watch them at a festival or by some other means. This was honestly such a good year for film that I think my top 40 are all films that I would really recommend people. So I will rattle off a few honorable mentions. It Was Just an Accident, Eddington, 28 Years Later, Flow, and The Long Walk. But without further ado, this is truly a special documentary. It is the third in a trilogy of docs made by Rob Moss, who spent decades filming his friends. He's on a mission to capture raw, authentic moments, the small moments that we perhaps don't think of much, the tiny pieces of magic, the small gestures, the little glances, the things we do impulsively that compound to make a meaningful life. This is truly an achievement in documentary filmmaking. It is my favorite documentary of the year. It is edited so powerfully. The amount of footage that they must have had to pour over to get something this lean is spectacular. It is an absolute delight. Such a powerful Brazilian film, this intense study of a woman who was married to a former politician during the military dictatorship. I really adored the methodical approach to the storytelling in this film, getting to sit with this family for such an extended period of time in a period of normality makes the anguish that the family is put through later on in the movie hit so much more. It is a gorgeous character study of the matriarch of this family, helmed by a powerful performance by Fernanda Torres. She's absolutely breathtaking in this film, such a subtle and nuanced performance. It's like she's playing two characters in her own life, the performative, brave, strong mother for her children, and the grief and anger-ridden woman who knows what's happened to her husband. As a massive and relatively new Linklater fan, and specifically a fan of his Hangout movies, this was right up my alley. Honestly, any fan of film and the history of filmmaking will probably get something out of this. Weirdly less so because it is this fictionalization of the making of Breathless, but more so just being in these rooms with these people on the birth of such radical directors of filmmaking. The conversations that are had in these rooms, the light scrutiny of Godard as a figure, and also the reverence for him. Just an all-round good time, penned with Linklater dialogue. It doesn't really get better than that. Color me shocked that I have a Bridget Jones movie this high on my list. I still can't quite believe it. I somewhat like the other movies. I think they're fine for the most part, but this is hands down the best Bridget Jones movie. Who would have thought that a clever situational comedy, instead of hammering on about how somebody is fat, works better as a comedy? And what's more, this movie just has an abundance of heart to it. I did not expect to walk out of a Bridget Jones movie saying I cried twice, but I did. The biggest compliment I can give this film is that it feels real. It feels like a real woman grieving and navigating her life in that messy way that we all do. Nothing is ever always sad or always laughable, and this film taps into that. Placing the character of Bridget Jones, who's always been a delight, into a more grounded story and just letting her be funny was a fantastic decision, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's like genuinely a great screenplay. I won't spend too long on this film since the sole video essay I managed to make last year was about this film, and I don't think I'll be able to do it justice what I did in that video. What I will say though is I think this film is sorely misunderstood, or not as appreciated as I think it should be. I adore the way Song composes her films, and I think this film functions wonderfully as a real microscope of modern dating through Lucy and the ways capitalism has infiltrated something which should just be felt love. I mean this in the most earnest, non-derogatory way, but child me would have loved this film. This isn't to say that I didn't. I clearly did. It's in this list, but I would have obsessed over this film as a kid. In my mind, this is a return to form for Pixar, a gorgeous story of loneliness, found family, and the desire to belong, It was filled with so much heart. Sure, perhaps the story beats are a little well worn, but I really don't find that enough of a reason to not enjoy this when it does what it does so well. Elio is a wonderfully realized character. It's impressive how quickly you get a sense of who he is and his yearning to belong. Honestly, the way that this is portrayed, I think you'd be hard pushed to find somebody who didn't relate to Elio. I found him so enthralling to watch and felt so much more personable than a lot of animated leads as of late. This movie is so bloody smart. The oppression of the surveillance state that we are living in, which for people in the public light is turned up to the nth degree, but also the thrill of said surveillance state, the allure of it, the adoration and power it promises and possesses, and the temptation of that status being enough to keep us in it no matter the risk. I truly, truly adored this film, from all of its kind of technical components to its performances. The camera work here, my God, this movie sings. What stellar choice to have the majority of the film being this oppressive and invasive camera focused purely on the main character Matthew. It gives you ample time to fully immerse yourself in his insanity, and how that slowly starts to change as the power dynamics shift as well is just utterly genius. The film would have worked nearly as well if it weren't for the lead performance by Theodore Pellerin. He is spectacular, one of my favorite performances of the year. His micro expressions are so captivating, I couldn't take my eyes off of him. Pair that with the oppressive camera work and it makes for a real treat. I thought this was stellar. The sheer technical craft on offer in these movies is second to none. Many will cite the CGI and the incomparable visual effects, and they should. That stuff is incredible. But Cameron's technical prowess is not just limited to that. What I was so impressed with here is how he crafts and composes scenes. His strong sense of positional awareness in action scenes and the glorious world building are all equally discernible reasons why these movies work. I've never been a massive Avatar person. I've always liked them on a technical level, but never found myself fully immersed in the story. This film changed that. The setup of the world in the previous two movies really pays off here, and we finally get to interrogate the characters a little bit more. It's not to say that the film is without issues, it's still undercooked in the writing department, but there was enough here to chew on. And as I said, the sheer technical craft on display is just second to none. It warms my heart to have another entry into this franchise now, which is as refreshing and exciting as the others. The formula is tried and true. It may be played out, but man, if that formula isn't fun, it's hard not to talk about this film and not mention Josh O'Connor. He is absolutely spectacular in this movie, and I'm so glad I got as much of him as I did in this. Out of all the leads in these films, he's by far the more intricate and well realized. This, I would posit, is because this film is most intricate out of the trilogy. Struggling and grappling with faith is such a potent thing for a lot of religious people, and this really dug into the power of faith on those who believe in it and finding faith in different things. Even simpler than that is the way that Johnson writes the churchgoers is pitched to perfection. The people who attend church aren't necessarily people who practice what is preached. It's an environment that is very cliquey. Now place a radical religious priest in charge of that church, and the results just create monsters. I think he nailed this exploration of religion in the modern world. This is one of the most inventive uses of cinema that I've ever seen. It's a fictionalization of an autobiographical story which takes place over multiple time periods, and at a point it becomes incredibly meta. I will stay purposely vague for this if you've not seen it. It's about a family who moves home and is exploring their internal dynamics through the eyes of a child. It would be very easy for a film like this to be an exercise in emotional exploitation. The harrowing story that Rumvari is recounting is enough to provide an emotional reaction from the audience. What transpires here is a piece that is only achievable through not only a first-hand account, but somebody who's done an immense amount of self-reflection on their own. The film is fractured and purposely cloudy, as this is something that nobody would ever be able to fully get a grasp on, but there's an infinite well of heart and love and understanding on offer here. Rumbari has crafted something completely their own, a family dynamic that at once feels warm, but also distant, a past which feels fractured, but also full of love, and the simultaneous sadness and gratefulness for her childhood. A gorgeous movie, my lord. I was transfixed by this film from the moment it started. Sure, it's treading well-worn territory for queer cinema, but it's doing so with such care and passion, and also providing a refreshing perspective on the situation. I was blown away by the editing in this movie. It is perhaps the best editing I've seen in a movie last year, minus one battle after another. The creativity on offer in the editing, the flowing between different time periods, the use of VHS camera footage, and the symbolic use of that was utterly genius. This movie just felt like a continual cycle of pressure and tension, the only respite being the pockets of love that the central character feels. But even then, these moments begin to sour and the relief becomes few and far between until it all explodes towards the end of the movie. This film hinges on the central performances. Russell Tovey is great, but Tom Blythe is absolutely spectacular in this performance. The film requires him to hold a lot on his face and say so much without saying anything at all, and he does it so masterfully. It is so apparent the anguish and the torment that he's put himself through because of his sexuality and the endless efforts he has made to try and cover it up. I truly, truly was blown away by this performance, and as the tension of the movie begins to mount, he guides the audience on that journey with him so wonderfully. I know this will be a little low for some people, but I just have films that I like a bit more. I've always been a fan of Coogler's work, especially lately within the MCU. It feels like he's had a uniquely refreshing take to blockbusters. Like there's been a vision there, despite being a part of the larger Marvel machine. It should come as no surprise then that when tasked to bring his first original story to the big screen, he does so with care, depth, and vision which has graced his previous work. Sinners is monumental and truly unlike any other blockbuster of note in a very long time. It is not constrained by genre, and even within the context of the movie seems to argue the case that genre is restrictive. As Linda Martell aptly put, genres are a funny little concept, aren't they? This film had the audacity to shatter the lines of genre and fuse so many together to make a compelling, rich story, which seeks to muse on how past, present, and future are all intertwined. It's so unbelievably unique from the jump that it's hard not to get pulled into this world. In the first few minutes, a deeply unsettling feeling casts over the film, and yet suddenly gears switch, and we spend half of the film sinking our teeth into the world, learning its characters through their interactions with each other, building out and fleshing this world so we care, and it only makes the back half of the movie even more compelling. It is an unflinching horror movie that does not seek to string together a narrative or get inside the brains of these soldiers or even explain what they're doing. The narrative pretense of simply wanting to show a continuous hour and a half of what these men went through, I think, is an inspired choice. It really emphasizes the pointlessness of why these men were deployed in Iraq. In the first half of the film, they're occupying a home, sitting, surveilling, not knowing what they're looking for. This is a far cry from the glorification of war done by Call of Duty and the likes. You are just existing with these men who have occupied a home because a soldier liked the look of it. The blasé attitudes of these men carrying out random tasks is immediately contrasted with a full-on assault to the ears. This film becomes this oppressive and unrelenting horror which showcases the ugly, horrific side of war that is often shied away from or dramatized to the point that it's easy to remove yourself from what's happening. This film does not allow you to do that. I'm still not sure if I'm able to put into words the experience that I had watching this movie. I saw it in a cinema and there was a sheer palpable stillness in the room, something that lingered long after the film had ended. This film is a fictionalization of a real event that happened. A 5-year-old girl was trapped in a car under fire in Gaza, pleading for rescue. She's on the phone to the Palestinian Red Cross, and who are trying to keep her on the line while they try and get an ambulance to her. The film uses real voice recordings of the phone calls that were happening as well. I spent half this movie choked up, wiping tears away. This is a devastating watch, made all the more heartbreaking by the uses of real voices. This type of storytelling, using the blurred lines between fiction and reality, was so effective here. I'm dumbfounded at the reactions this was able to maintain for the entire film. It so expertly expresses how difficult this situation is, the layers of bureaucracy that have to be upheld to ensure safety, but these same restrictions being fuel to the frustration of the situation. It's superbly acted and directed with a propulsion and an energy which gets across how horrible this situation is. I think every world leader should be forced to watch this. I was absolutely blown away by this. The word epic gets thrown around quite a bit when it comes to films. I could not think of a word more appropriate for Resurrection. A film which seeks not to be understood but to be felt, to imagine worlds, to live in characters, to dream. For those who dream are truly the ones who live. Going on a journey which exemplifies the beauty and the power of cinema through the years is an absolute delight. Each period personifies through that era's cinematic stylings. It nails all of these. It's directed with such variety and precision. Never did these stories feel like they weren't a part of a cohesive whole. It's truly up there with the best visuals I've ever seen and deserves to be seen in the cinema. Its richness and intricacies perhaps lose you in some places, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't moved by this insane piece of cinema. Some parts are burned into my brain. I'm so glad I discovered Linklater this year because I'm realizing he might just be one of my favorite writers ever. And pair that with one of the most insane performances from Ethan Hawke, you get a wonderful film. This film is utterly hilarious, but also very quiet and profound. There's a deep sadness running throughout this night that the film takes place over. And the comedy feels like a mask for the inner feelings of our main character, Hart. It's a very hard line to walk to make somebody laugh, but also feel deep regret for laughing or have an understanding that this comedy is coming from a bad place. It's a brilliant character study, but also such a great hangout movie. At once hilarious, but deeply poetic. Linklater makes this verbally hypnotizing. I got so much out of this. One of the most gorgeous displays of humanity I've ever seen on screen. It is very hard to do realism, hyper realism, really, and very naturalistic scenarios right. But almost immediately, this film made you feel like you were part of this world. I do love how much this feels like a Chloe Zhao movie. Her signature style is written all over the film. The ethereal qualities that the movie possesses, the naturalistic ways that she's shot, and the very human way that she crafts characters. The best word that I can use to describe this movie is just incredibly human. It feels so real. The film begins to mount, and it feels like it's all heading towards this emotional resolution, this climax at the end of the movie. Hats off to both Zhao and O'Farrell for managing to write something so poignant that does feel like this emotional payoff, but also feels like a release not only for the characters in the movie, but for the journey that the audience has been on throughout the entire film. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Jessie Buckley. This is her movie. She's absolutely outstanding. The modes in which she has to operate in here are really extreme, but never did she feel like she was putting on a performance. It felt so real. Obviously, she will get a lot of credit for her larger-than-life moments, the screaming, the unbearable weight of her grief, but I think it's in her quiet moments that she truly shines. I saw this all the way back in January, and it's remained in my top 10 ever since. When I think of words to describe this film, the word which comes to mind is towering. This film truly feels like an epic, a rarity in cinema when it's not attached to a franchise, and even more rare to have something of this grandeur done on such a small budget. Not only does this look better than the majority of films on offer in cinemas whose budgets are massive, but it's also more compelling. The film is an encompassing insight into the American dream and the hope the land offered people in that time, and sadly the lies and corruption which plagued the land. It's also just a gorgeous story of a man's journey to improve his life and failing to the trappings that were on offer to him. It's gorgeous. The shaky cinematography really places you in the shoes of an immigrant experiencing the whirlwind of America for the first time. The film is filmed with a myriad of great performances helmed by Adrian Brody. He is magnetic and dynamic in this movie in a way that draws you in and doesn't let you go. It's always the biggest compliment when a character just feels like a real human, and in this movie you feel like you're witnessing his story and that this man is a real person. He's flawed and he's nuanced and just feels real. I'm not sure anybody's exploring human emotions on such a profoundly unique, internal, intimate level as Joachim Trier is. Sentimental Value is yet another addition to his oeuvre of films that is exploring what it's like to be human, what it's like to express the myriad of emotions that we all go through, what it's like to make mistakes and to fail and to feel regret and to make up for it. He's exploring incredibly fallible people, which at the end of the day is what all humans are. This movie is profoundly tender and ever so sweet. It's a far more mature piece of work. The people that he's characterizing here feel more fully formed. It's as much about looking back as it is about living in the present. It's almost this pull between the past and the present that creates this beautifully naturalistic tension and gives it room to flourish. I really love the resistance that is portrayed here to their father's way of expressing his love, and also the complications that the father struggles with in conveying across this piece of art as his way of expressing love. Whether or not that's clear to him and is a conscious thought or not, it's fascinating to be in a position to realize the faults of why the characters are not as close, even if this is unclear to the characters in the film. What an outstanding debut. It falls in that camp of movies which are character focused, small, words are being the guiding force. But Sorry Baby, it feels distinct. It feels very much in its own lane. Often a criticism leveled at films which try to juggle a lot is how tonally disconnected they feel. The biggest compliment I'm able to give this film is how controlled and precise the tone is. In a matter of minutes, you could be so joyous and laughing to suddenly feeling devastated. It never felt out of place. The comedy not only felt natural, but was also funny. The more serious scenes as well were handled with such delicacy. It just struck this balance so unbelievably well. In large part, the tone, and by extension the film, works as well as it does because of the writing of Agnes, played by the wonderful Eva Victor. She feels real, which is not always easy to do when handling such heavy themes, but it's in her realism that the tone is able to float in and out so fluidly. Real people are not only funny or only serious, even after such tragedies. People do still try and find the light and stuff. There's powerful moments in here as well where humor feels tinged with a deep sadness, like she's forcing herself to make light of the situation. How the comedy evolves from necessity to feeling natural as well is just wonderful, and just nuts that it comes through so naturally. This is Lanthimos at his most restrained. He spends a lot of this film crafting its world and its characters, really unpacking what they mean to each other and who they are contextually as part of the wider world. This pays off massively when he gets to go full Lanthimos. In his restraint, he manages to land the impact of his more gruesome and strange tendencies, which have much more of a vigorous gut punch than in his previous efforts. The film has all the staples Lanthimos has become known for. It's gorgeously realised. The colour grading is just spectacular. Is bubbling with commentary on our modern world, and he uses outlandishly exaggerated characters, which somehow feel so deeply true to our world, to really unpack and explore wealth disparity and class struggle. What I think Lanthimos nails here is the sympathy he affords these conspiracy theorists. He presents them as smart, competent people who see the problem, but due to the machinations of the internet, have come to the wrong solution. It's a deeply empathetic film. It wants you to really understand the mind of this man, how humanity has pushed him to do what he's done. It's genuinely such a fascinating way to explore class dynamics, essentially making every character repulsive. A film that I think very few people will have heard of, let alone have seen. I'm very fortunate to have seen this at the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I couldn't recommend this enough if you do get the chance to see it. However, I doubt many will, as this film deals with such jarring and disturbing subject matter. I don't think this will get distribution. The film follows a queer cam boy, Aaron Eagle, who is shocked to discover a personal connection that he has to a mysterious stranger who is paid for his company. The film is an excavation of who these men are to each other and what that means. And I won't say what that is because I think it spoils the film. Blue Film really challenges you with its content, whether or not you're able to detach yourself from said content to judge the film and the arguments being presented to you. It's small and super intimate. The film is just two characters, both of whom seem to be guarded. Slowly but surely, the film is uncompromising as it strips back these characters to reveal who they really are inside. The film is stuffed full of conversations which are quite uncomfortable, but what's quite powerful is how the film challenges you to sit in that and to be confronted with the horrors that are being spoken about. It's an incredibly heavy and harrowing topic this film covers, and something which could very easily slip into being too lenient on its characters or to come off so critical that it doesn't allow room for discussion. And it manages to strike this balance somewhat well. Some scenes are really just uncomfy to sit through, but that's the point. It's unflinching and deeply uncomfortable, but is provocative in a way that I think cinema rarely gets to be as of late. I've been reeling from this film ever since I saw it. Some of the most emotional, heartfelt and raw filmmaking on offer currently, and I found myself deeply moved by this story. Eisenberg has not only proved himself as an extremely talented actor, but with this feature he has proven he's an expert director and especially a phenomenal writer. This is a wonderful screenplay. What starts off as the characters perhaps feeling very stereotypical quickly fades away, and suddenly they become fully realized, complex human beings. It's a testament to the script that they are able to become as human as they do in such a short runtime. I went into this expecting to relate to a specific character and slowly found parts of myself in both. The characters had real grit to them. They aren't perfect movie characters. They simply felt tangible, and what's more moving than watching the human experience on screen? The script, while wonderful, would be nothing if it weren't for the excellent performances on display. Kieran Culkin is doing such an expert job at playing in between the shades of comedy and sadness, somebody who is able to disarm you and tear you down just as easily. The emotion written on his face, I genuinely could gush about him so much. I was brought to tears by his performance. I do think Eisenberg is also great. His character is equally as complex, and his performance harbours a lot of deep emotion, especially in a truly wonderful scene where he delivers a beautiful monologue. Not only did the characters feel real, but the film did. Perhaps a strange thing to say about the film, but it didn't feel like a movie. It very much was like a slice of life displayed on screen. It doesn't really follow the typical beats you would expect a story like this to, and I find that so refreshing. Emotional climaxes happen when they happen, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes feelings boil to the surface but never spill over. Sometimes in life we bite our tongue in order to stop pain, but often in biting our tongues, in not being open, we cause ourselves a deeper pain. Call it recency bias, but this blew me away. Propulsive, energetic filmmaking that lit me up inside. There's something special here with the way that Josh Safdie has managed to distill this idea of ambition, this pursuit of greatness, into something so powerful, entertaining, thrilling, and also seeks to scrutinize that ambition, where it's born from, if it's right, and what it does to the person who is holding that ambition within themselves. It's very clear that greatness doesn't just happen. It is worked on, chiseled away piece by piece until it perhaps replaces the person who was once there. It feels very fitting for the modern day grind set that is being forced upon younger generations. This ambition has consumed his life to the point where it's all he knows. If he is so assured and confident in his delusions, it becomes hard to discern where the lies begin, or even where he begins. Marty Mauser is one of the most fascinating characters put to screen in a while. He's deeply morally flawed, but in a world which itself is corrupt. Is he just in his pursuit of greatness if he only ever punches up? Somebody who has been beaten down by the world and told to shrink, like most people do, somebody going against that grain, against that oppression, and fighting back makes people feel uncomfortable. And the situations that arise from this, and how Marty feels cognizant of the illusions that are placed in a lot of us, is utterly fascinating. None of this would work as well as it does if it weren't for Timothée Chalamet. I think he's absolutely magnetic in this. He completely loses himself in the role. The ambition feels like it is clawing at him beneath his skin. You can see it etched across his face, the desire to be something more than he is, always striving forward, to be pursuing something that he is deeply longing for. It is a magnificent performance that feels like a bucket of blood, sweat and tears went into. It's funny looking at the other Safdie brothers' work. This feels on paper less stressful than the others. However, what I find fascinating is that stress underpins Marty as a character. It's not necessarily a constant in the events that are going on, but it lives within him and thus creates this utterly fascinating atmosphere where you are stressed because he is never resting. He is always looking for more. He has to constantly be moving forward, and that in itself creates stress. This is a movie about choices and the culmination of those choices, how the choices in life that we make do have an effect on us. It is the pursuit of greatness and the trappings that come with that. It is being the underdog in a world that perceives you as a single thing and does not like it if you aim higher. It is a masterpiece in screenwriting from Josh Safdie, just an utterly brilliant display and balance of tone. One of the funniest films of the year, yet also one of the most profound. I absolutely loved it. I was incredibly lucky to see this the way it was intended in glorious VistaVision, but even prior to that day, this film had gained such critical acclaim and appraisal. It really did make me question whether or not I was going to fall in love with it. It felt like it had this insurmountable pressure on it that few films have had. So it's safe to say the bar was set quite high for this film, and I think it passes it. I'm flirting with the word masterpiece. This film manages to transcend the idea of film and brings us something that is both culturally relevant and timely in the way that it speaks to the collision course the Western world is on, and the political divisions and the atrocities which are being committed in the name of politics, and seamlessly blends that with an entertaining, funny, action-packed blockbuster. PTA's strengths are on full display here, but at the same time, this feels completely unique amongst his filmography. It stands out, but in a good way. He is fusing elements of cinema which, as of late, seem to have diverged. This film is at the same time both pulpy and fun, fully leaning into the action blockbuster, packing it to the brim with comedy, but it's also very thought-provoking and auteur-like. It is a film which harkens back to blockbusters of old. It feels like this in a multitude of ways, in how characters are written so complexly and are so well-rounded that the comedy seems to arise from knowing who these people are and the situations they get themselves into, in the narrative being relatively simple and letting that simple story lend itself to allowing room for depth. Nothing makes this feel more like a film of a bygone era, more so than how this film looks and is shot. Sure, the VistaVision and the commitment to shooting on film is an aspect of this, but also just in how precisely this film goes about filming certain scenes. Having these action scenes feel tactile and real, choosing actual locations to shoot in rather than relying on visual effects does so much for how visceral these scenes get. You feel so deeply in these scenes because of how well crafted the characters are. You care for them and the danger they find themselves in. Much like every other PTA project, he writes his characters with such care and such depth that these feel like complete realised humans whose story he is showcasing. The relevancy and exploration of timely themes in this film is nothing short of wonderful. For this to resonate as much as it does, and to have been made before a lot of American politics descended into what it is now, shows how much PTA has an eye for social relevance. I love the portrayal of white supremacy here, something which has been explored a lot in cinema. Often these characters dip into extremes, into perhaps people who are easily removed from the modern world. But here it's confronting. It is making you question who's really orchestrating the conflict in Western countries. There's something so scary here about the main opposing force of this film being men in golf jumpers, people you probably have interacted with. I do think it's no surprise how on the nose PTA was with this film. Take a look at history and you will see this kind of stuff repeats itself. Something the film is all too aware of, see the title of the movie. It's just wild how accurate it feels to the world right now. He's just so good at writing, down to the little implicit details of characters. Leo's Bob, who on the surface could just be a funny stoner, but underneath there's so much to question about where he's ended up and why. The reasons somebody might lean into conservatism after they've had a kid. The reasons he got into the revolution in the first place, and those reasons changing as he grows older. I found him, like the movie, so utterly fascinating, but so funny as well. I do just want to say as well, the more that I've sat on it, I think the final chase sequence is perhaps one of the greatest action scenes ever put to film. It's so simple, but it's doing so much at the same time. The tension built up at that point, the care for the characters, it's just genius. The whole sequence being a metaphor for the entire film is ingenious. Literally just having a few cars chase each other with no outlandish parts, and yet to craft that much tension out of it, nobody is doing it quite like PTA. Fast and Furious films wish they could craft a scene with that much tension. So that's it. Another year, another list of movies, and a new start for this channel. I announced this on my Instagram, which if you're not following, go give me a follow. I do daily videos over there, but I'm aiming to do weekly videos on this channel this year. I had some stuff planned for this channel already, which I'm super excited about. I did want to keep it just video essays, but I realized as I was making Instagram and TikTok videos, that sometimes I talk so much that it could have just been a YouTube video. So the videos on here will change slightly. I'm still going to have my video essays, so don't worry if that's why you're here. I have stuff coming up this month I'm super excited about. I have my end of year awards and then some Oscar stuff, which will be really fun. If you like this video, like and subscribe. If you want my daily thoughts on everything film and TV, go follow me on Instagram and TikTok. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Bye!